When my daughter looked me straight in the eye and said, "Either you respect my husband's authority or find somewhere else to live," I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I simply smiled, walked to my bedroom, and started packing. She expected me to crumble, to apologize, to beg for forgiveness like I always had before. But this time was different. This time, I had finally reached my breaking point. What happened next would shake our entire family to its core, and by the end of this story, they would understand the true cost of taking someone's kindness for granted. Before we dive into this incredible journey of justice and redemption, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Your support means everything to this channel. The morning it all started seemed perfectly ordinary. I was returning from my weekly grocery run, arms full of bags containing all of Marcus's favorite foods. My son-in-law had very specific tastes, and I'd learned over the past 2 years that keeping him happy meant keeping peace in the house. As I struggled through the front door of what used to be my sanctuary, I found Marcus sprawled across my late wife's favorite armchair, the one she'd spent her final months reading in during her battle with cancer. His feet were propped up on the coffee table, a half-empty beer bottle dangling from his fingers, eyes glued to some sports program. The remote control rested on his stomach like he owned the place, which I suppose he believed he did. "Hey, grab me another beer while you're up," he called, without even glancing in my direction. I set the heavy bags down slowly, feeling the familiar ache in my lower back. At 72, these grocery runs were getting harder, but I'd been doing them without complaint, because that's what family does for each other, or so I thought. "Marcus, I just walked in," I said calmly. "Let me put these groceries away first." That's when he looked at me with that expression I'd grown to recognize over the months. The look that said I was being unreasonable, that I was making a simple request into some kind of federal case. "What's the big deal, Richard? You're already standing. I'm comfortable." He gestured lazily toward the kitchen. "Besides, this is basically my house now anyway." The words hit me like a physical blow. This house had been in my family for 3 generations. My grandfather had built the foundation with his own hands. My father had added the second story. My wife Sarah and I had raised our daughter Emma here, created a lifetime of memories within these walls. "Your house?" I kept my voice level, though my heart was pounding. Marcus finally stood up, using his height and bulk to tower over me. At 35 he was bigger than me, broader, and he knew it. "Look, Richard, we can do this the easy way, or the hard way. You want to keep living here peacefully, then you need to understand how things work around here now." That's when Emma appeared from the kitchen, dish towel in hand, looking between us with an expression I'd seen too many times lately. Instead of defending her father, instead of reminding her husband, whose house this actually was, she sided with him. "Dad, just get him the beer, it's not worth fighting over." But Marcus wasn't finished. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the alcohol on his breath and see the coldness in his eyes. "Here's how it's going to be, old man. You live in our house now. You contribute by doing what we ask. That means, when I tell you to do something, you do it. No questions, no attitude, no discussion." Emma nodded in agreement, presenting a united front against me. "Dad, you need to decide right now. Either you show Marcus the respect he deserves as the man of this house, or you can pack your things and leave." The ultimatum hung in the air like smoke from a fire that was about to consume everything I'd worked for. I looked at my daughter, searching for any trace of the little girl who used to crawl into my lap during thunderstorms, who used to help me tend the garden, who used to tell me I was her hero. All I saw was a stranger, wearing her face. "All right," I said quietly. Marcus smirked, thinking he'd won another battle in his campaign to establish dominance. "Good. Now about that beer. I'll pack." The smirk died on his face. Emma's mouth fell open slightly, like she'd expected me to fold immediately, and shuffle off to the kitchen like a beaten dog. I turned toward my bedroom, leaving the grocery bags where they sat. Behind me, I heard Emma's whispered, "Dad, wait," but I was already walking down the hallway, my footsteps steady on the hardwood floors. Sarah and I had refinished together 25 years ago. The old suitcase came down from the closet shelf with a soft thump. I'd bought it for our honeymoon to the Grand Canyon, back when Sarah was still alive, and the future stretched ahead like an open road. Now it gaped empty on the bed, waiting to swallow what remained of my life in this house. I packed methodically, taking only what I needed. 3 changes of clothes, my medications, reading glasses, the small leather journal where I tracked my finances. The photo of Sarah went into the side pocket, wrapped carefully in tissue paper. I wasn't taking everything, just enough for what came next. When I wheeled the suitcase down the hallway, Marcus and Emma had stopped their urgent whispering. He'd returned to his chair, but his posture was different now, alert and watchful. Emma stood by the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, trying to look stern, but failing to hide her uncertainty. Neither of them said goodbye, as I walked out the door for what I thought might be the last time. My car started on the first try, reliable as always. As I backed out of the driveway, I didn't look at the house to see if they were watching from the window. The 30-minute drive to Sunset Manor Motel gave me time to think, and the memories came flooding back. Emma's college education at that expensive private university she'd insisted on attending, $45,000 a year, for 4 years. I'd worked double shifts at the factory, taken on weekend jobs, denied myself even small luxuries to make sure she could chase her dreams. Her wedding to Marcus had cost $32,000. His family couldn't afford their half, so I'd covered it quietly, not wanting anyone to feel embarrassed. The reception hall, the flowers, her dress, the open bar that Marcus's friends had certainly enjoyed. Everything had to be perfect for my little girl's special day. Then came their house, down payment. $75,000 from my retirement savings. Young couples needed help getting started in today's economy. That's what fathers did. I told myself. That's what Sarah would have wanted. The monthly help followed, like clockwork. $1,500 for their mortgage, when money got tight. $400 for utilities. $600 for groceries when Marcus was between jobs, which seemed to happen frequently. My social security check disappeared into their lives piece by piece, and I'd convinced myself it was love. Sunset Manor Motel sat on the outskirts of town, a modest building with clean rooms and reasonable rates. The room was small but comfortable. A bed, a chair, a tiny table by the window, overlooking the parking lot. I set my suitcase on the luggage rack and sat heavily on the mattress edge. The silence was different here. Not the comfortable quiet of my family home, but the hollow emptiness of a temporary space. I pulled out my phone and started making calls. After 40 years in banking before retirement, I knew exactly which numbers to dial. I opened my laptop on the small table and logged into my online banking. Account balances glowed on the screen, numbers that represented a lifetime of careful planning and self-sacrifice. The cursor blinked in the search bar, waiting for me to decide what came next. Sunday morning arrived grey and overcast, matching my mood perfectly. I spread my paperwork across the motel table, like a general planning a campaign. Bank statements, insurance policies, account information, everything organized and within reach. The first call went to Mountain Trust Bank. Sunday banking was limited, but automated systems never slept. "Good morning, Mr. Patterson," the representative said after I navigated through the phone tree. "How can I help you today? I need to cancel the automatic mortgage payment for 147 Oak Street, account ending in A pause, computer keys clicking. "Sir, I show that payment has been active for 2 years. Are you sure you want to discontinue it?" "Completely sure. May I ask the reason for the change?" "The homeowners no longer qualify for my financial assistance." More clicking. "Very well, Mr. Patterson. The automatic payment will be cancelled effective immediately." The second call was to Safeguard Insurance. I'd been paying for both their cars on my policy for 18 months. Marcus's pickup truck and Emma's sedan, $240 every month, for vehicles I never drove. "I need to remove 2 vehicles from my policy," I told the agent. "The drivers will need to establish their own coverage. When would you like this change to take effect?" "Today." The credit cards took longer. Emma was an authorized user on 2 of my accounts, and Marcus had somehow talked his way onto a third. $400 monthly I'd been paying on balances I'd never created, purchases I'd never made. "Mr. Patterson, removing authorized users will require them to apply for their own credit," the representative explained. "Any outstanding balances will remain your responsibility, but they won't be able to make new charges." "I understand. Remove them immediately." Each call felt like lifting a weight from my shoulders. 40 years of banking experience had taught me the systems inside and out. Everything I was doing was completely within my rights, legally and ethically sound. By noon, I'd made 12 calls. Mortgage payments stopped, insurance cancelled, credit cards blocked, the automatic transfers that had been bleeding my accounts dry for months. All of it ended with polite conversations and confirmation numbers. I sat back in the motel chair and looked at my notes, confirmation numbers, reference codes, effective dates, the paper trail of financial independence. My phone sat silent on the table. No missed calls. No urgent messages. They didn't know yet. Probably wouldn't know until the first payment bounced, until the first bill arrived with their names on it instead of mine. But they would know soon enough. The week passed quietly for me. But apparently, not for them. I'd settled into a comfortable routine at the motel. Coffee from the lobby each morning, breakfast at the diner down the street, long walks around towns, quiet neighborhoods, afternoon reading on the bench by the lake. My phone accumulated missed calls like a collection I had no interest in starting. By Wednesday, there were 15 messages. By Friday, 28. I listened to them in chronological order, watching the progression from confusion to anger to desperation. The first few were almost casual. Emma asking if there was some kind of banking error with the mortgage payment. Marcus leaving brief, annoyed messages about the car insurance lapsing. But by the middle of the week, panic had crept into their voices. "Dad, what the hell is going on?" Emma's voice cracked with frustration. "The bank says you stopped the automatic payment. They want the full amount by Monday, or they'll start foreclosure proceedings." Marcus's messages grew increasingly aggressive. "Richard, you need to fix this right now. I've got people asking questions about my insurance. You're making us look like deadbeats in front of the whole neighborhood." The later calls bordered on begging. Emma crying, promising they'd work something out if I just called them back. Marcus trying a different approach, claiming he'd been too harsh and wanted to make things right. I deleted each message after listening, feeling nothing but mild curiosity about their growing desperation. Thursday morning brought a knock at my motel room door. Through the peephole, I saw them both standing there. Emma in a wrinkled sweater, Marcus in his work clothes, both looking like they'd slept badly for several nights. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. "Dad." Emma's eyes were red-rimmed, her usual composure completely cracked. "We need to talk." "About what?" Marcus pushed forward, his face flushed with anger, and something else I recognized as fear. "About the fact that you're trying to ruin our lives over some stupid argument about beer." "I'm not trying to ruin anything," I said calmly. "I'm simply no longer paying for your lives." "The mortgage, Richard." Marcus's voice rose. "You can't just stop paying our mortgage. That's our home. Actually, it's my house. My name on the deed. My signature on the original loan. You two were just guests who overstayed their welcome." Emma grabbed Marcus's arm as he stepped closer to the door. "Dad, please, we can work this out. Marcus was wrong to talk to you that way. We both were. But you can't just abandon us with no warning, no discussion." "You gave me an ultimatum," I reminded her. "Show Marcus respect, or get out." "Those were your exact words." "I didn't mean it like that." "Yes, you did." I looked at my daughter, seeing a stranger wearing her face. "You meant every word. You just didn't expect me to choose option 2. Marcus tried a different approach, his voice artificially calm. "Look, we all said things we didn't mean. But you're talking about our home, our credit, our whole future. You can't just pull the rug out like this." "I can, and I did. I started to close the door. You wanted me to leave. I left. You wanted to handle your own lives. Now you can." "Dad, wait." Emma's voice broke. "What about family? What about everything we've been through together?" I paused, looking at her desperate face. For a moment, I remembered the little girl who used to bring me dandelions from the yard, who helped me wash the car on Saturday mornings. But that little girl had grown into someone who could stand by while her husband humiliated her father in his own living room. "Family works both ways, sweetheart," I said quietly. "I spent 2 years taking care of you both financially and emotionally. When it came time for you to take care of me, you chose him instead. Marcus's fake composure cracked completely. You crazy old... I can call the police if you keep raising your voice. I interrupted. This is private property, and you're disturbing other guests. They stared at me, probably seeing me clearly for the first time in years. Not the soft-hearted father and convenient bank account. Just a man who'd finally learned to say no. Marcus grabbed Emma's elbow roughly. Come on, we'll figure this out ourselves. They walked back to their car, Marcus's usual swagger replaced by worried slouching. Emma looked back over her shoulder like she was seeing a ghost. I watched them drive away, then closed the door and returned to my laptop. There were still calls to make, still accounts to close. The work of dismantling a one-sided relationship was far from finished. The next morning, I was having breakfast at Murphy's Diner when I ran into Bob Harrison, an old colleague from my banking days. We'd worked together for 12 years before I retired, and he'd always been someone I could trust with sensitive information. Richard Peterson. Well, I'll be damned, he said, approaching my corner booth. Mind if I join you? Haven't seen you since Sarah's funeral. He slid into the opposite seat before I could answer, studying my face with the practiced eye of someone who'd spent decades evaluating people's financial situations. Heard you moved out to the motel. Everything all right? I considered how much to share. Bob was trustworthy, but he was also still active in the local banking community. Family situation, I said finally. Needed some space to think things through. Bob nodded slowly. That son-in-law of yours came into our office a few weeks back. Tried to take out a home equity loan on your property. My coffee cup stopped halfway to my lips. My property, that's right, had documentation claiming he owned the house. Wanted $50,000 against the equity. Bob's expression darkened. When we ran the title search, everything came back to you, of course. Clean title, no co-signers, nothing that would give him any legal claim. The implications hit me like cold water. Marcus had been planning to steal from me, and this wasn't a recent decision born from our current conflict. When exactly did this happen? 3 weeks ago, maybe 4. I handled it personally because of the amount involved. Bob leaned forward, lowering his voice. Richard, this wasn't a mistake about ownership. The documents he brought were forged. This was deliberate fraud. 4 weeks ago, Marcus had been planning to rob me while living in my house, eating my food, and demanding my respect. The beer incident wasn't about establishing dominance. It was about maintaining access to money he believed he was entitled to steal. Did you report it? We rejected the application and flagged his information in our system. Technically, since no money changed hands, it's a grey area legally. But I kept copies of everything. I thanked Bob and left money for both our meals. Walking back to my car, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts. It was time to make some strategic calls. The first was to Continental Collection Services, one of the agencies that had been leaving messages. This is Richard Peterson returning your call about Marcus Thompson. I need to clarify something important. He doesn't live at my address anymore and has no legal claim to my property. He listed your address as his residence on all credit applications. He was a guest in my home. I evicted him last week. If you're looking for him, he works at Davidson's Auto Sales on Highway 12. The second call was to Asset Recovery Solutions. The third to Midwest Credit Management. Each conversation was brief and factual. I wasn't paying Marcus's debts or providing personal information, just correcting the false addresses he'd been using to avoid his creditors. By the end of the day, I'd contacted 8 different collection agencies. Marcus's carefully constructed house of cards was about to collapse, and unlike his previous schemes, this time there would be consequences he couldn't manipulate his way out of. That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over, old man. You'll regret this. I forwarded the message to the police department, then blocked the number. Evidence collection had become second nature. Monday morning brought the first signs that my plan was working. Emma called at 7:30, her voice thick with sleep and stress. Dad, there are men at the house asking about Marcus's debts. They want to know about our income, our assets, everything. What did you tell them? I told them the truth, that Marcus has no ownership interest in my property and no longer lives there. But they're talking about garnishing wages, seizing assets. Dad, I don't understand any of this. Sweetheart, That's what happens when someone borrows money they can't repay. Those are consequences Marcus created, not me. How much does he owe? Her voice was small, like a child asking about monsters under the bed. According to the collection agencies, approximately $22,000. Gambling debts. Mostly. Silence on the line, then quietly. He told me he was working overtime those nights he stayed out late. I'm sorry you're learning about this now, Emma, but these are the realities of the man you chose to defend against your father. The call ended abruptly. An hour later, she called back. Dad. Marcus is talking about leaving town, says there's nothing left here for him. Her voice cracked with genuine fear. What am I supposed to do? Make decisions based on who Marcus really is, not who you hoped he was. That afternoon, I drove past my former house and saw two different creditor vehicles parked outside. Through the living room window, I could see Marcus and Emma arguing, his gestures aggressive and desperate, hers defensive and frightened. The fairy tale marriage built on my financial foundation was crumbling as reality intruded, and I felt no satisfaction in their pain. But I felt no guilt either. They'd made their choices. Now they could live with the consequences. 3 days later, Emma called with news I'd been expecting. He's gone, Dad. Marcus packed his truck yesterday morning while I was at work and left. No note, no forwarding address, nothing. Just disappeared. I wasn't surprised. Men like Marcus always ran when the bills came due. I'm sorry your marriage ended this way. I'm not, she said quietly. I found out he'd been using my credit cards for gambling without telling me. The debts are even worse than we thought. What will you do now? I don't know. I can't afford the house payments on my salary. I'll probably have to sell, try to start over somewhere else. She paused. Dad, I know I don't deserve to ask, but is there any chance we could talk, maybe work toward fixing what I broke between us? I looked out my motel window at the mountains in the distance, thinking about second chances and the difference between forgiveness and trust. I never stopped loving you, Emma. But love and enabling aren't the same thing. If you want to rebuild our relationship, it has to be based on mutual respect, not financial dependency. I understand. I think I'm finally starting to understand a lot of things. 6 months later, I stood in my old living room, now empty except for the memories. Emma had sold the house to pay off Marcus's debts and her own credit card balances. She'd moved into a small apartment across town and taken a second job to make ends meet. But something had changed in her. The entitlement was gone, replaced by a humility I hadn't seen since she was a child. She was working hard, making her own way, and slowly earning back my respect through actions rather than words. Thank you, she said, standing beside me in the empty room where it all began. For what? For loving me enough to stop enabling me. For showing me the difference between helping someone and hurting them with kindness. I put my arm around my daughter's shoulders, and for the first time in years, it felt genuine. She wasn't hugging me for money, or favors, or guilt management. She was hugging me because she'd finally learned what family actually meant. The house sold to a young couple with 2 small children, people who would fill it with laughter and love instead of manipulation and entitlement. As we walked out together, Emma turned back for one last look. Do you think Marcus will ever come back? Men like Marcus don't come back, I said. They just find new people to use. I wasted 2 years of my life with him. You learned something important about yourself and about relationships. That's not wasted time if you use the lesson wisely. As we drove away from the house where 3 generations of my family had lived, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Not the hollow peace of avoiding conflict, but the deep satisfaction that comes from standing up for yourself and watching justice unfold naturally. Emma was building a new life, based on her own efforts and honest work. Our relationship was slowly healing through genuine communication rather than financial transactions. And somewhere out there, Marcus was probably looking for his next victim. But that was no longer my concern. Sometimes the hardest thing you can do for someone you love is to stop protecting them from the consequences of their choices. It had taken me 72 years to learn that lesson, but it was never too late to choose dignity over being taken advantage of. The motel room had become my home for 8 months, but now I was ready to move forward. I'd found a small house near the lake, perfect for a man who'd learnt the difference between loneliness and solitude, between family and obligation, between love and enabling. As I packed my belongings one final time, my phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Coffee tomorrow morning. I want to tell you about the promotion I got at work." I smiled, typing back, "Coffee sounds perfect. I'm proud of you." And for the first time in years, I truly meant it. If you enjoyed this story of justice, dignity, and redemption, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps us bring you more incredible stories like this one. Until next time, remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to stop being taken for granted.